It's not often that you scroll Twitter and you get bombed. You just get like a bomb dropped on you. That happened to me, and no, I'm not in the Middle East. I am here in Springfield, still in Illinois. But Drew Dolman dropped the bomb on Bears Twitter today. I kept thinking I was going to keep scrolling and be like,
Really
Dan,
unexpected.
I kept thinking it was going to be like the Max Crosby news. That would be the bomb that would eventually be dropped on me, right? But yeah, 27 years old. The Bears just gave him a ton of money. I've been reading reports that there's a little bit of maybe this could send some pushback for the NFLPA to have to kind of handle, because Drew Dolman basically hit free agency, got $34 million and a Pro Bowl to play 1 year with the Bears, and then is out. Like, he's retired. Yeah. He's done. He cashed a big check. He doesn't have to give any of that back. It's all guaranteed. And now it's just like, boom, the Bears are left stranded. That, their starting left tackle, Ozzie Trapillo, got injured at the end of the year, so he's going to miss majority, if not all, of this upcoming season. And he was a promising rookie who had really held down the left tackle spot. So here we are as the Bears. You start a year ago, we're in the same spot where you need a left tackle and a center. And for an offensive line that was just so good together last year, Dolman was so good. Devastating. I can't be mad at a guy for retiring, right? Like, take care of your health, 27 years old, get out while I can. But man, it feels a little bit like we got.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gut punch.
At least he played really well for a year, right? Like, okay, you earned that money. It's not like some guys who like get a big cash check, like Albert Haynesworth shows up with a Washington back in the day. Remember that? Takes like $100 million and like barely plays, and then they have to, deal with all that. It's a frustrating day for Bears Twitter. I'll just say this. This was a point I was going to make on this show anyways. A lot of people want Bears to trade for Max Crosby. I was one of those people who's like, I'm interested in Max Crosby, but I don't want to give up multiple first-round picks. Like, I really think this team is not just a player away, and I really think just building through the draft is the best way for this Bears organization to keep going, is just keep making good selections. Well, now I don't know how you can trade for Max Crosby and give up a DJ Moore and multiple picks maybe, when you now have to fill a left tackle, a center, and the Bears still have a couple other holes they have to fill. It looks like they're letting Tremaine Edmonds walk. Like,
well, and I mean, it's not like their guards are super young. Like, they're going to need.
Yeah, Thuney is old.
They need depth there.
Yeah,
and you can never have too many offensive linemen. So I'd be surprised if they didn't walk out of the draft with more than two.
Yeah, I really think, obviously Linderbaum is a free agent center. They're going to have that conversation. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, but the starting center for Washington, who made a Pro Bowl, they cut him. He's a younger guy, mid-20s, who's coming off a great season. He's expected to get maybe half the money that Linderbaum is. They got to be in on him. So you have to address holes. The Bears don't have a ton of money to spend anyways. And so I didn't know how the Max Crosby thing was going to work money-wise. Well, now if you're telling me they're going to sign Max Crosby to a giant deal and trade him picks and players to get him, I really don't see the Bears doing that. They've got some real holes now they have to be aggressive on. So here we are, Dan. It's the start of March, and it's panic in Chicago already. And I'm not the only one. There's teams all over the league here that feel the same way. That is the exciting part of the March season of NFL football, with the free agency opening a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got a week from tomorrow. Obviously the news will file in a couple days beforehand. We'll start hearing reports of X player projected to get signed by this team. So that tampering period, or that negotiating period, starts next Monday. So that's very quick. The franchise tag deadline was today. So we're going to discuss some moves and decisions that were made around that deadline, and then start to talk about a Bear quarterback class, but still a couple quarterbacks that are prominent enough to discuss. Could there be some hot destinations for them during this free agency period? We'll get into all of that next. right. So as I mentioned, the deadline to tag players in the NFL was this afternoon, and so we have our results. Not too many surprises, but still definitely some outcomes worth discussing. So we'll talk about the players that were tagged first. That would be Brees Hall, the Jets. They are tagging him for a $14.2 million franchise tag. These are all, of course, 1 year deals, but Brees Hall getting locked up there in New York. We've got George Pickens getting locked up in Dallas. His franchise tag is 27.2 million. So again, this is the depending on the tag type, a non-exclusive tag, which is the most common tag that can be applied, means nobody else can even have a chance at getting this player. We are locking them down, and they are owed the average of the top 5 paid players at that position. So that's where that amount works out to. Wide receivers obviously get paid a ton, so their tag price is a lot higher. Transition tags are those that are applied where you only have to average the top 10 at the position, but as a downside, other teams have the ability to negotiate with that player, and you just have the option to then match whatever offer they are giving. And then, of course, there's the option to not tag at all. So Kyle Pitts received the traditional non-exclusive tag as well. $15 million the Falcons will pay to keep him there in Atlanta. And then the final tag is Daniel Jones. The transition tag was placed on him. So other teams can have the option there to try and win his services, but the Colts will have that first right of refusal. $37 million for Daniel Jones next year. So wherever you want to start, Mark, we can kind of go through that list of the players that were tagged before we get to those decisions to not tag certain players.
Well, I'll start with the fact that all of them, from the sounds of it, from the other reports I've been reading, are still in negotiations to sign deals, right? Like they're all looking.
This is usually the first step to buy more time.
Yeah. Brees Hall, Kyle Pitts, George Pickens, and Daniel Jones. I would say to me, listen, if I'm the Jets, I think that's the most important thing. Like Brees Hall is your most explosive player. This is a team that is devoid of a lot of star power and talent, and it's a team that needs to start turning momentum around. Letting Brees Hall walk out the door would have been really, really brutal for Jets fans. And so I think that was important.
The tag amount is 14 million. I mean, that sounds like, peanuts compared to what any other position's going to go.
Yeah. As far as the other skill position players like Kyle Pitts, I wouldn't be shocked if Atlanta just says, you know what, maybe we can't work out a deal. Let's just go with 1 year with Kyle Pitts. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski, he used tight ends really well in Cleveland. But I think, Kyle Pitts is a guy that's had a really, kind of slow start to his career. And sure. I think that he's a guy that we're going to see Atlanta maybe with the new Kevin Stefanski. They're kind of roll the dice. If he pops and he goes for huge numbers, well, then I think they'll sign him and they'll reward him. You know what I mean? Or if he really explodes and pops and he becomes too expensive, they'll say, maybe go try to get your money somewhere else. And then if he has an okay year, they tagged him and it was an okay year. Maybe they move on, or maybe they can get him for less money. I think it's kind of the best case scenario for Atlanta and Falcons fans, because as they're trying to figure out what they're doing with the quarterback position and what they're doing with this brand new offense, I don't think it makes sense to just automatically sign Kyle Pitts to a giant deal right now. As far as the Dallas Cowboys go, they're going to be a theater show, right? Like it'll be a story all offseason. George will probably say, I don't want to play in the tag. I'm not showing up to camp. They'll have the same song and dance we did with the Micah Parsons, with the Dak Prescott, contract. So I think that's going to be a long time coming. I'd be shocked if it was clean and easy in Dallas. And then finally for Daniel Jones, I think it's a win for Indy because 1 year, 5 million or 33 that they have to own. Okay, that's a lot.
37.8. It might as well be 39.
It's a lot. 39 million for Daniel Jones for 1 year. It's more. I'd like to be paying him closer to just 30 million a year in that kind of Baker Darnold range.
Yeah.
But you also, I don't know if I don't know if I want to sign him to a 3-year deal.
Right.
And
No,
and
I kind of think it is their I mean, they can afford it, and they're in a kind of a limbo at that position right now
yeah,
too, and who they gonna draft this year?
and
And so it's like, okay, we've got next year solved. We'll reassess.
and I think we'll talk about this coming up with the holes in the quarterback position. There are some teams I think out there who'd be willing to offer Daniel Jones a 2-year, $50 million contract, 2-year, $60 million contract, right? To where that would force then Indianapolis to make a decision on Daniel Jones. And are we going to match, or are we going to let you walk? I think there's some interesting names and some interesting teams out there to think about in that world. So we'll get into that discussion a little bit. I'm a little more surprised at some of the guys who weren't tagged. And I think that's kind of the flip side of the story, right? There's some big names who are going to be set to hit free agency. Kenneth Walker, I mean, being the Super Bowl MVP, kind of the star of that group, right, Dan?
Yeah. Kenneth Walker not getting franchise tag, so he is going to be a free agent. Super talent, still a young running back. Obviously, has a little bit more um, availability, less wear on the tires, right? Because he's been in a two-back system now for a couple years. He's also had some injuries in the past that's limited his time on the field, so it's kind of a toss-up there. But I think we both agree he's an extremely talented running back. It has seemed that they've not quite figured out how to use him in tandem with Charbonnet. Now, that's obviously, you can take that with a grain of salt, given that it worked for the team to win a Super Bowl. But there
Yeah.
were times, throughout the year where you're like kind of scratching your head. You're like, Kenneth Walker, he's your explosive guy, and he's getting 8 carries, and you're giving it to Zach Charbonnet, who's a really talented running back. And I think there's, a lot yet to be seen from him. And maybe they just felt like we have 2 really good running backs and we can't sustain both. So we're going to pick the younger one that we drafted more recently and less. It might be as simple as that, but it was working in terms of keeping both legs fresh. And as we saw, of course, in the postseason and in the Super Bowl, Kenneth Walker put on a clinic. So he's going to demand one of the highest salaries, if not, I would venture to say he'll be a top 3 paid running back come next year. I mean, you got Saquon, who had the big deal with Philly. Derrick
CMC.
Henry's making a pretty penny.
Christian McCaffrey.
Yes, McCaffrey, of course. I don't remember what Gibbs's deal was, or if he signed
His re-sign, yeah.
that
Well,
extension,
I mean, he's the bell cow back now. They traded David Montgomery. That was one of
right.
those other
So
moves.
Gibbs will reset the market when that time comes for sure. But it's going to be a pretty substantial figure for Kenneth Walker. He's still young enough.
Yeah.
What is he? 27 years old, 26 years old.
Yeah.
Explosive. So he's going to have some suitors for sure. And then we had Trey Hendrickson, who, surprised or not, like it's surprising because it's like, how did they keep screwing this up?
Yeah.
But then again, I felt happy for him that he can finally move on. That this situation's behind us, because this has felt like 3 years of constant talks about what are they doing with Trey Hendrickson. They've tagged him, and then obviously this year decided to let him test free agency. So at least he'll get his opportunity out there. But I don't know how this makes the Bengals better as a team. And it's just, when you pay your 2 wide receivers that amount of money and you got money in Joe Burrow, I can understand that they don't have so much money to put around. But when they're in this window, it's really hard to get away from a generational talent.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL to me feels like right now you pay for offense and you draft defense, and then you selectively maybe spend money at one position on defense. And defensive end, and a guy like him would be where you'd spend your money. I think the problem is he's just one of those guys.
Corner, I guess.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that feels like got old. Like all of a sudden, it's like, man, he's in his early 30s, right? And it's like, oh, are we gonna commit that deal at that time? It just feels like things didn't.
They should have done this years ago, right?
Yeah,
he's locked up for this year and next, and then that would have been the time to move off.
Yeah, and he's still. I think he's still made really good money in his career. I bet if you look it up, I'm not like my heart doesn't
I
break
can
for
look
him,
this up right now.
and I feel like he'll get a good deal. Listen, he's someone who he's one of the reasons I would have also said the Bears shouldn't trade for Max Crosby. Go sign like Trey Hendrickson to a 2-year deal. You know what I mean? Give him a lot of upfront, like in 1 year, and just he'll help you try to win in this window where you're not paying your quarterback. There's a lot of teams who are going to be in the market for a Trey Hendrickson. There's a lot, you know what I mean? Like, think about teams that are trying to right now win and be competitive. I think like a Kansas City would love to get their hands on a Trey Hendrickson to rebuild, to rebound and rebuild. I think a Baltimore would love to get their hands on a Trey Hendrickson to add to that defensive line. I think a Buffalo looks like, okay, we can add a Trey Hendrickson. Chicago, maybe even a Green Bay. Like, they're going to be missing Micah Parsons for most of the year. When Micah comes back, if you sign him to a 2-year deal, I don't know what all these teams' financials are like, but I'm just starting to think of teams that are in a win now mode. Hell, Detroit, put him on the other side of Hutchinson. We've seen them trying to solve that issue, right? There's a lot of teams that feel like, hey, a Trey Hendrickson for the next year or two makes a ton of sense if the money makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, hey, did you mention the Chargers? I feel like the
Chargers
Chargers could really use.
It sounds like they want to bring Mac back, but again, yeah, put him opposite of Mac for 2 years with this run, this
The
kind of window
latest
you have.
update per over the cap has the Chargers with the third highest cap space available at 85 million.
Yeah,
So like they're
so
going
there
to
you
be
go.
able to
They
afford
can be
Trey
aggressive.
Hendrickson pretty easily.
Yeah,
But the Bengals had 47 million.
yeah.
Now, granted, a tag on Trey Hendrickson would have cost them 30 million
because they had already tagged
or
him.
so.
Yeah.
So that's an expensive.
You got to.
But the Patriots could. They have 40 million to work.
That makes
with
sense.
As well.
That makes
so,
sense. There's
you sign him to a 3-year deal, you can spread that out a little bit, and then you don't have to worry about the hard cap hit this year. So yeah, there's quite a few teams that have options there.
Listen, the Niners could use a guy like him. They're getting so beat up on their defensive line. It's getting old.
Sure.
I know he's old,
I mean,
but
can
again,
you imagine him with Bosa for a year. I mean, that would be incredible.
But if you think your window is open, like a guy like him to a 2 or 3 year deal where the money is heavy up front, it's going to make a lot of sense. But I also wouldn't be shocked if there's a team that's willing to give him a 4-year deal that's less of a winner, that he's just like, screw it, I'm going to go get paid and find my way to that place. I will say Kenneth Walker really quick. I was like, oh, the Texans are going to be all in on Kenneth Walker. And then they make the David Montgomery trade, which to me it's a great trade for them, because Montgomery, getting him for giving up an offensive lineman and a couple later round picks, like, he's got a lot in the tank still for like a 2-year run for what their window is like. And they don't have to sign him to some sort of giant deal, right? Like they would have had to sign a Kenneth Walker. But again, the Kenneth Walker market feels like there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks calling their GMs and head coaches like, hey, cool, are we kicking the tires on Kenneth Walker? Are we in on that? Because look at the Vikings are letting go of Aaron Jones. Imagine him in Minnesota as a bell cow back. That would be scary.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other teams that you can list to say, hey, in their own division, the Cardinals kind of like going in on a run game with a Kenneth Walker.
Sure.
Making him a featured part of the new LaFleur system down there, where running backs are kind of the key to everything, as we know with his brother and Josh Jacobs. I even think Tennessee with Saleh being like,
absolutely. No, Tennessee has the most cap space as well.
We got a young quarterback. We don't have a ton of wide receivers. Let's go just get a bell cow back maybe we have to pay him for 4 years and he's only good for 2 years, but we need to reset this offense. And we need, with Brian Daboll's offense, to go get a featured running back. There's a lot of interesting landing spots for him. And he's not the only running back. Travis Etienne, I think, is also another one of those guys that was not tagged, who is going to hit free agency on that.
Oh, yeah. You know what? The NFL.com didn't put that on their tracker.
I think he was on the Schefter list that I had sent you.
Okay.
Etienne.
Yeah.
There's a couple other big names.
He was not. There was a Colts wide receiver, Alec Pierce. That was an interesting one. The Ravens center that you've mentioned, Tyler Linderbaum. That was a curious one too, because he's a pretty talented young center. So yeah, if I'm the Bears, I would probably go
He's
take
just gonna.
that on.
It sounds like he might be commanding 20+ million a year, which is a
Yeah, yeah.
lot of money.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But if
But he's
if you
very
want
good.
an anchor for your offensive line,
He's
that's
very good.
that's a guy. And the center's, arguably next to left tackle, the most important position
Yeah.
on that offensive line, and then Chargers defensive end Odafe Owe. But if I now obviously the cap space is just what the cap space is now. A lot of teams do this magic that they're able
Yeah.
to free up a lot. I really do think a team that could absolutely use a Kenneth Walker would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Like a guy that can just make an explosive play out in space and give them a new dimension to their run game that they haven't had. Isaiah Pacheco's been a fun story and great to see, but he's much more like that downhill. And clearly, it doesn't appear at this point that he's a true 3-down back that can be trusted upon in every situation. Kenneth Walker in that situation would be an absolute dynamic player to add to that room. But the Chiefs are, $6 million right now in the red for their cap space. And then when you look at the teams that have a ton of cap space, you mentioned the Titans, they're number one. A lot of these teams already have running backs. So it's, the Raiders have a running back. The Chargers could be interesting. Like I could see, Najee got hurt right after they signed him last year, so he didn't play. Maybe, they're not committed to him long term. They might cut.
They have
bait
a
with
rookie who
Najee
they're
Harris.
not paying much.
J.K. Dobbins, obviously had his moments, but it's not like they had a world beater year from the running back position at all in LA. So,
But didn't Dobbins end up in Denver? And then it was Omarion Hampton mainly in.
I'm sorry.
in
You're
LA.
right.
Yeah,
You're totally right. Yeah.
yeah.
I am.
No, but I get what you're saying. Like you have
So-
a rookie, and here's the thing: Kenneth Walker comes from a 2-back system, so it wouldn't shock me if a team is going if the number is right, a team like the Chargers who values running the football may say to themselves, we can spend and still have a 2-back system, and that way we get the 4 years of productivity we're about to give him in a contract, as opposed to, a bell cow back. You sign him big money at one team, and then what if he gets, nicks his hamstring up week 7, and then you're left with no one.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
do what the Lions did.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And I think if you look at teams that made runs this postseason, from the Bears to Seattle to New England, obviously the Chargers were in the postseason, the Broncos, a lot of these teams were using 2 backs for the majority of the year and not just a 1-back system.
It does seem that that's kind of the way things are going, unless you have a Saquon Barkley. Like like most teams are just saying we're going to run a nice 2-back system, which is, ETN kind of fits the mold of you can plug him into certain situations. Yeah. Maybe he is a guy that Chiefs are interested in because they're like, okay, Pacheco will be our early down heavy personnel grouping back, and then third downs and out of the backfield, we'll take ETN and have him be the splash that we need. I mean, if there's anyone that can do creative things with the different positions, it's Andy Reid. So
and keep an eye on New York, right? Like they have Scatabo. I don't know what his availability is to start the year, but like an ETN Scatabo combination in New York with Harbaugh, I think sounds really interesting.
That could be interesting.
We're just throwing stuff around here, but it's that's what this is so fun to think about, right?
Or the Ravens. I mean.
I mean, Derrick Henry's on the last year of that deal, and if you bring in an ETN, man, that would be a lot of fun.
That's a lot of speed.
And
got there back there.
ETN is. I mean, I think as you said, there, Kansas City is, I think, a better fit for ETN than even Kenneth Walker there, just because of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Yeah. And he really was fantastic in the last later part of the season. Dan, it's fun. This is what this is all about. I will say, as we transition to the quarterback talk,
quarterback city.
What we want from our viewers too is like, hey, by the next time we're talking again next week, legal tampering will be at the end, and we'll be on the precipice of the actual um, free agency beginning, which we'll know so many deals by then, right? Because it always starts like at
Yeah.
midnight on Sunday night into Monday morning. It's like boom, 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 deals be going off. So there's going to be a lot of things to talk about. So send us a message if you're a listener and you want our immediate thoughts, and we'll try to make sure we hit on the one you want us to talk about. Obviously, there'll be big ones that we'll talk about, no brainers. But if there's some smaller, interesting signings for your specific team, make sure you send us a message so we don't
Definitely.
forget about that at this time next week, because we're going to be this is going to be it's going to be an avalanche. Or at least we hope so, because that's what's so fun about it.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things, I mean, it's not considered a player that wasn't tagged because that wasn't necessarily in play, but a player that's not going to be with their team next season is Kyler Murray. The Cardinals have expressed to him that unless there's a trade, he's going to be released and enter free agency. So
him and Tua both, I think it's like, unless there's a trade, but there's no one's trading for those.
No one's trading for either of these guys, I don't see. So both are expected to hit free agency. So let's talk some destinations. Where do you think, who do you think would be a good fit for Kyler Murray? I guess we can start there because he's a very interesting case. As opposed to Tua, there's a lot of pedigree there that didn't ever match with production on the field. But we've seen Kyler make some unbelievable, ridiculous plays. We know he can make it out there as a starting quarterback, but there's a lot of questions about him too. So where does he have his best chance to succeed, and what team would want him?
So I'm going to take this from the perspective, if I'm Kyler's agent, right? If I'm in his corner. So like, you have two things you're balancing, right? Get as much money as you can, get as much security as you can, but also know that this is kind of a last chance, right? Like
you want to be in a position that you can
Sam Darnold
contract.
Though Sam Darnold going to Carolina, while he got benched, he was 4-2 and played well enough to where there was offers, but then he decided to go be a backup and then had to kind of scrap for that Vikings opportunity. And remember, if JJ McCarthy doesn't get hurt in preseason, does Sam Darnold even start the season as the starter that year? So like there's risk, right?
That's true.
It's a tightrope you have to walk. So listen, obviously the Jets are a name. I think if you consider New York, the thing that I would want from the Jets is two things. I would want as big of a contract as possible and as long as a contract as possible, because that would help guarantee you don't draft a quarterback. Now, remember, New York already has Tyrod Taylor and Justin Fields still under contract on the roster. So if I'm Kyler, I'm going to say, listen, I want the contract that makes me kind of the starter going into camp. And I want the type of contract from the Jets that would also then assure me that you're not really running the risk of them drafting a quarterback at the top 3 rounds, right? Like you want to avoid that pitfall, kind of like Kirk Cousins. He got blindsided by Atlanta. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, I thought I got the contract that meant you weren't going to draft again. You draft a guy, and it immediately, became a bad situation. The other place is obviously I'm going to monitor the Daniel Jones situation because I want to go to Indy with that head coach, that roster. Sure. If Daniel Jones is not the quarterback there, I would take less money, right, to be like, all right, let's make that work. Then obviously some other interesting spots that I would consider would be like, okay, if Minnesota is serious that I can come in and I can be in a quarterback competition, I would take less and trust that I could win that job over JJ McCarthy. And then I'm immediately in an amazing situation with an amazing coach and great weapons. Otherwise, there's really for Kyler, what else are you considering? Pittsburgh, if they're interested, I'm interested because again, I'm getting an offensive coach. I'm getting a bona fide number 1 in DK Metcalf and some weapons that really came on at the end of the year. A great tight end group, a really up and coming running back group. So I think that's interesting. That's a tough division, so I don't love that. I don't love being outside in the weather and the cold if I'm Kyler. But again, if I have a worry for me if I'm Kyler is like, you're going to tell me I'm the starter, and then you're going to draft a guy in the second round, or maybe Will Howard really pops, and it's like, shoot, I might be in some trouble here. Those are the instant kind of destinations. What do you think in react to those destinations, or was there one there that I didn't say that you would be interested in as well?
There's one that you didn't say that I think I'd be interested in, but I agree with a lot of what you laid out there. A lot of those destinations make sense. I do think the best spot for Kyler would be Indy, for many reasons, but I think that would just be his best spot to succeed. But the team you didn't mention was the Falcons. Like I really do. I don't think they're tied to Penix, and now you're talking about Kevin Stefanski coming in, who has no ties to Michael Penix. So how committed are they to him? No idea. But the situation for Kyler would be a little less easy to convince. But I think for the Falcons' case, why not? Let's bring in Kyler. Let's push the boundaries for Penix and see who wins this battle.
Yeah.
For Kyler, yeah, you're not going in with as much assurance as you would like, right? But I also think that would kind of forecast that they're probably not going to draft one because they just did. And now they've paid you to come in. They've got youth in the quarterback room. Like, I think they would bank on trying to stabilize for a little while. I think that would give you a 3-year window to work with, without having to, worry about things completely being turned upside down. So that would intrigue me. And you're in the NFC South. That's intriguing. You're playing in a dome. Like, I think a lot of that would still work in Kyler's favor, right? And the weapons, my goodness, right? So a very enticing landing spot, I would think, for both Kyler and for the Falcons, but probably more so for the Falcons' case than anything else.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that, because I agree with you. The reason I left Atlanta off is because if I'm Kyler, yeah, I would view that the same way I view the Vikings, right? A really great opportunity, a really great destination. I would trust that I can beat out the presumptive, second year going into third year starter. But
how much,
my thing is, if I'm Atlanta, if it's like, yeah. And if you're Stefanski in Atlanta, I just don't know if I want that. If I'm Stefanski, I feel,
you want to bring in your guy.
I feel less pressure than maybe Minnesota. Right? If I'm Stefanski, I feel a little less pressure to be like, listen, I can roll Penix out for a year. And if it doesn't go well, be like, he's not my guy. Let's go get my guy in a quarterback class next year that's rich with quarterback talent.
And we've all seen what happened to Kevin Stefanski when he takes a job and then they decide to sign an outside quarterback that he probably wasn't necessarily in on.
Let's be honest, if it's really Matt Ryan calling the shots in Atlanta, Matt Ryan, what Stefanski said on the Part of My Take pod, which was a great interview with him, is that Matt Ryan and him are aligned football-wise. And if I'm Matt Ryan, what am I looking for in my quarterback? I'm probably looking for someone like me, right? And if I'm Stefanski, listen, I had a lot of success with who? With Baker and with Joe Flacco. And the big, armed quarterbacks who are more like, I will stay in the pocket, and then my mobility is
run the system.
Yeah, my mobility is an option. So that bodes well for Penix, and I do think maybe that's why they want to see what Penix has with Stefanski.
Right.
So we'll see.
That's
Listen, again, if I'm Kyler, I'm taking the call. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I would imagine most of these apply for Daniel Jones as well. I mean, Daniel Jones obviously his best landing spot, again, staying in Indy. It worked well last year.
Or to go back to the Minnesota.
Yes, I could see that as well. That would be an intriguing option too. The problem for the Vikings, they are $46 million in the red currently. They have a lot of cap space that they need to figure out and work through.
They're letting go of Greenlaw, I saw, maybe, or something like that.
Which, who are they even? Where's all this money going to? There's got to be a significant amount of dead money.
They're paying their wide receiver, and then
then Harrison Smith's contract was probably pretty.
Yeah, but you're right. I'm trying to think who. It's interesting. Minnesota's financials. They got a new GM. They got a new GM, so maybe they're trying to clean up some of that stuff.
Yeah, so that'll be tough, But yeah, Daniel Jones, I mean, man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You just got to hope that Indy is not feeling antsy now that you got hurt and
Yeah.
they're
He's in
like,
a great
hey,
spot.
we got to do something.
He's in a great spot because, right, like his worst option is I go back to Indy for $39 million. Like that's a great,
Well,
great
I mean,
place.
I guess that's his worst option, but he could potentially, Indy could. Well, yeah,
No,
yeah, no,
they've
I guess
tagged
you're
him.
right. I
So
guess you're
there
right.
he is
They
with
put the
Indy
transition tag, so
unless someone else offers him a
yeah,
better option and then Indy could still match. And
yeah,
and Daniel Jones could get an offer from like the Jets and turn it down, right? I believe that's how that
yeah.
works
I
too.
think so.
To
I
be
think he
like,
could
the way the transition tag works is the player has to accept the contract, and then Indy has the first right to match or not.
refuse it. Yes.
Now, if I'm Daniel Jones, that's a tightrope to walk, right? I want Indy to sign me for longer and more money, but am I willing to risk it and then be stuck heading to a Jets, right, and be in a bad situation? Sorry, Jets fans, but we'll just be honest here. The only other options, if I was Daniel Jones, I'd be very interested in seeing what Arizona has to say. I get to go to a guy in LaFleur that runs a very quarterback friendly system like his brother. Maybe they're willing to offer me more years and more money and say, all right, maybe I would be interested in that. That's one that stands out. I'd be interested in what Pittsburgh has to say with an offensive coach, maybe if it's more years, but that feels a little shakier than the system I'm already in.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm Daniel Jones, I think he's in a really great spot. Like he had the Sam Darnold breakout year until the injury. And so why not just get healthy and hope to make magic again?
You just hope it's not the Geno Smith breakout year with Seattle.
Right.
You know,
to where and that's why I think
to where he's just fine in year 2 and then they cut bait.
Teams will be wary, I think, to sign Daniel Jones for a big deal, which is why I think if you're Daniel Jones, looks like you're going to get $39 million. Just get to stay in maybe the most desirable spot for you. I would be really surprised if a Raiders or someone came out of nowhere and threw a giant 3 or 4 year big bag deal at Daniel Jones. I'd be really surprised. And I'd be even more surprised if Indy matched that. I think Indy is sitting pretty with where they're at. I think Indy knows as well, if Daniel Jones gets an offer, they'll have a great opportunity to go sign a Kyler Murray or someone else. They'd be immediately the most desirable destination for the rest of the free agent quarterback class.
Someone I think that could draw more than what Justin Fields got with the Jets deal, that was 2 for 30, right? Is Malik Willis. Malik Willis could get a 2 for 40 or a 3 for 50. I'm not sure, but he could get a fairly enticing. I mean, it's not a great free agent quarterback class to begin with. And he's a guy where I think a lot of teams can still say, oh, nobody really knows what you got with him yet. Like, so he could be this superstar waiting to happen and I can mold him into something. He obviously popped this past year and the Matt LaFleur system worked wonders for him. He got to develop there. So he's kind of the big ticket, young, prove it quarterback in this free agent class. So where do you, I mean, are the Cardinals in play or do they, is that are we just, recycling the Kyler Murray situation? Because they fit the mold. I mean, Malik is a much bigger quarterback, but a very, very mobile centric guy. Would he be the spot? I mean, go from LaFleur to LaFleur?
So the 3 quarterbacks we talked so far, right? Kyler, Daniel Jones, and Malik. He would be my number 1 of that option, right? I'd be willing to throw. So if I'm a GM and a coach, I'd look at this like, okay, it happened with Baker, it happened with Sam, it happened with Daniel Jones. He just got injured. He's bigger and thicker and more durable than a Kyler Murray. He's younger than a Daniel Jones and more like undeveloped upside. And
more mobile. Like Daniel Jones is mobile, but Malik Willis is very mobile.
And he's and as of right now, you look at his year in Tennessee and year plus, it's like, okay, what did he have in Tennessee? No one's really working in Tennessee. And as soon as he gets with a really competent organization and offensive coach, he was terrific in his spot starting. And so you say to yourself, if I get him in as an offensive coach in my system, and I can get him on that 3-year, 60 million, you know what I mean? Or 2-year, 50 million, whatever, quarterback friendly, team friendly deal. Maybe we have the Baker thing. Maybe we have the Sam Darnold thing. Maybe it's not Super Bowl like Darnold. Darnold is thrown a wrench in all this by winning the Super Bowl, right? And being the best quarterback statistically in the league for the last 2 years. But he certainly, I feel like, could pop like Baker, where it's like, well, no, we can now compete for the division and maybe sneak into the playoffs in a wild card or something like that. Obviously, to me, the two destinations that stand out the most, Cardinals number one. And then I would say if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm really kicking the tires on him. I think he showed in Green Bay.
Should have drafted him. They drafted Kenny Pickett instead, and then 2 rounds later, Malik Willis gets tagged.
I think he's shown that he can handle the weather, be durable, and Mike McCarthy, I'm sure, has still some people in Green Bay he could talk to be like, hey, this kid he's a real deal practice, guy. Yeah. If Mike wants to go that route and not go the Will Howard, Aaron Rodgers route. What say you as a Steelers fan who has it, but also then if you're Malik, I don't know if I would go. Listen, maybe I don't know if Minnesota's the right system for him, right? Like I don't know if I'm Kevin McConnell, if I want that. If I'm Atlanta, I would maybe really kick the tires on that if Stefanski feels like the mobile is what we want. But again, I feel like Atlanta's looking for.
I mean, I wonder if Vegas would really, want a Malik Willis.
Yes,
in there. Vegas, I think he would be.
If they start evaluating Fernando Mendoza and they don't think he's the guy at 1, then I think.
Well, and even if they get some insurance because they're not going to pay Mendoza much. And so I think now, and Malik's not going to be the starter then for the entirety of whatever you sign him to, but there is some insurance there. And
if you're the Raiders
style,
if you're the Raiders, though, maybe in that case, I would do I'm drafting Mendoza, but also trading for Andy Dalton, right? You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more like that.
You got Kenny Pickett already in the building.
Yes, too, right. Like if I'm the Raiders and I'm not taking Mendoza though, and you can go get a haul for the first pick, right? If you go get a haul for the first pick and go sign a Malik Willis, that's really interesting. The issue that the Raiders could have to deal with though with that is
the timing.
Yeah, because if you sign Malik Willis, then everyone knows you're not drafting Mendoza, so I'm not giving you the haul. Now you could still argue.
You could still play it though.
You could still argue for the haul because you're going to pit teams who want Mendoza against each other. But it does take a little bit maybe away from the haul.
It does because they know that's one spot that's not going Mendoza. So it's about there's less.
It's interesting.
That's one less team you have to battle with for Mendoza for one.
It's very interesting, isn't it, Dan?
It is. That could really be a very interesting factor. Let's talk Rodgers. To me, his only logical landing spot is Pittsburgh, and 100%. That's all announcements and reports since have indicated that he will be back. So I guess I kind of at this point am expecting him to be back. I would have liked. Malik Willis, I would totally kick the tires on bringing Malik Willis in, but obviously not if they're going to bring in Rodgers too. And it would kind of suck because I think their evaluations of Will Howard then would be a little bit more limited if you brought in Malik Willis. Like he's clearly then I would imagine coming in to be the starter. And so how much of a competition really is there between him and Will at that point? I mean, it all depends on the contract. I would absolutely kick the tires on it, but assuming that doesn't happen, I do think Aaron Rodgers comes back, and I think he's going to run it back one more time. The reason I say it's the only one that makes sense to me at this point, like going to Minnesota before last year made sense. I don't think it makes sense now to go from the Jets to a entirely brand new system in Pittsburgh and then go to an entirely brand new system for what's likely your final year in the NFL in Minnesota. It makes more sense to just be reunited with what you know. They have a great
Yeah.
relationship with McCarthy. There's a lot of coaches that McCarthy's brought on that Aaron Rodgers both knows and loves. His favorite coach is apparently the Steelers' new offensive line coach, James Campen. That is apparently Rodgers' number one guy in his NFL career. So that would just make the most sense to me. But do you have any thoughts on Rodgers'
Listen,
destination beyond Pittsburgh?
if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm okay with Rodgers in one more year. Now,
I'm
I know
okay with it too.
that's
Yeah.
easy to say, but I think there's something interesting about getting the band back together. He played well. It wasn't his fault that you didn't advance necessarily in the playoffs. The
They need
defense,
another receiver so bad.
the defense
So
fell
freaking
apart.
bad.
So, like, yeah, if you can take Rodgers and go sign an Alec Pierce, or maybe draft someone early in one, round 1 or 2, I think it's interesting for 1 year. And I think at worst case scenario, if Rodgers starts to struggle or fall off, then he might Mike and him might have enough of a relationship to bow out gracefully and say, listen, Aaron, we tried it. Like Aaron is gonna move to the bench. We love Aaron. He's gonna stay a part of the team, but we're gonna transition to Will Howard. And maybe you get a real look at Will Howard at worst case scenario, who's a guy who I think everyone still believes there's a ton of upside with Will Howard. I'd be shocked if Pittsburgh is drafting a quarterback in the first 4 rounds. I'd be really, really shocked. That being said, if I'm Aaron, I do consider 2 other options if they're being offered to me, and that is Minnesota and that is Atlanta. And the other outside the box one would be Indianapolis if someone signs Daniel Jones and Indianapolis is left without holding, without. Because again, I would be going to 3 really great offensive coaches, and I'd be at least given the chance to compete or earn the job, right? And in those systems, maybe 1 year you could have a last minute flash in the pan. But you're right. I think those are long shots, but I would at least consider it. I would not consider going to Arizona. That division's way too tough, and you don't know what you got in that LaFleur. That not Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur, that LaFleur. And so I think those are that's kind of it. And I can see Aaron being comfortable saying mid-season if things aren't going well, maybe if he gets nicked up, going, listen, this was it. This was my last ride. And I love Mike. I love the Steelers for giving me this chance to last ride. The best thing for me to do, the best thing for the organization to do is for me to step down, nurse my injury or whatever it is, and help them Will Howard. I'll be available in emergency situations after I heal in like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I could see that, and I could see that being graceful and not being disrespectful or anything like that. I could also see him just saying, I'm going to hang it up. Maybe he doesn't come back. And if I'm Pittsburgh,
I could easily see that. Yeah.
And if I'm Pittsburgh and that happens mid-training camp, I wouldn't panic. I would just say, let's go with Will Howard. And maybe you go then get I don't know who would be a younger name available. Maybe you go and get an Anthony Richardson. You stash him on the bench and be like, okay, if we're going to let Mike work with him this, through the camp and the beginning of the season, and then he's something if things go really horribly wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that a lot of that makes sense. I anticipate, as do the Steelers from everything they're saying, that a decision will be made much, much sooner than it was last year as it relates to Rodgers. So I'm thinking we'll find out. But if I'm Rodgers, I'm probably also waiting to see what you do in the draft. Like, what's your plan? What are you going to get for my final year? I would like to know that.
This next week for the Steelers is going to be really interesting. If the Steelers are the team that breaks news that they've signed Alec Pierce, right? Like, and they agreed to that deal, that becomes a way more interesting job.
I would love it. I mean, the Steelers also currently have $40 million in cap space, so they have a lot to work with. They can easily sign Alec Pierce and still draft a wide receiver first round. Like, I would do that.
I read somewhere too, they're looking to restructure some of like the Watt deals and stuff to make more money. Cause like the Chiefs have already announced that like their real salary will change once the league year starts because they've
For sure.
restructured with Mahomes.
They'll free up
Um,
another 10, 12 million easily.
they'll
So
find that. They'll find that. Yeah,
they'll
I think it's good. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's been really interesting this offseason, man. Because it does feel like if
kind of
Aaron comes
important.
back, it does feel like we want to go all in for a year, but we also are reshaping this whole kind of system, like what we're about, what
Mhm.
we are as a team. So that's gonna be fun to watch. Do you want to go to Tua next?
Yeah, yeah, I forgot we didn't touch on Tua. Yeah, let's talk Tua. I think he's the last one in the line, right? I can't think of any others that really stand out. I mean, you got Russell Wilson and stuff, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
Russell has said he wants to play and wants to start. I think that's bad. If I was Russ, but maybe he's the guy who's waiting for Indy, someone else to pay Daniel Jones, then Indy's left without a chair, and he goes there and says, "Sure, I'll start, and you can draft a
Yeah,
quarterback, whatever
or
it might
injuries,
be."
you know.
Yeah,
But
right. Um,
yeah,
I
Tua's an interesting one.
Tua. So here's my initial thought with Tua. He is going to have to deal with what Darnold dealt with, and I think what Baker dealt with, which is you're going to go somewhere that they probably also draft a quarterback, and he is going to have to perform and perform well. He's kind of in the Russell Wilson in New York spot, where it's like, dude, this is everything, right? This is everything. Um, and Russell didn't perform well enough, whether it was the coach, whether it was him, whatever it was, to stave off the young guy. So where does that land you if you're Tua? I'm obviously going to listen to New York. I'm going to listen to Arizona. I'm going to listen to Atlanta. I'm going to listen to Indianapolis. I'm going to listen to Minnesota. All of those on the table. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to call him. And if I'm
Mm-mm.
Tua, I don't know if I'd listen in Pittsburgh because that's just what a mountain outside in the cold. Your main weapon is a feisty deep threat. Those are not things I want to handle if I'm Tua through camp, right?
Sure.
And then being compared to Will Howard, where it's like you're standing next to this 6'5" dude with a big arm. So the Raiders, I don't think would kick the tire on Tua. I don't know if I'd listen to the Raiders if I am Tua. Again, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd want to go to that spot. Otherwise, I
I
do
don't think
think
the Cardinals would be very interested,
no,
to be
but
honest.
again, if you're left out in the cold, this draft is brutal for quarterbacks, right?
It is.
So if you can get Tua for a 1-year cheap deal and draft a quarterback, I'd be interested if I'm Arizona, right? If Arizona can get Ty Simpson in the late first, early second, if that's kind of what they end up with, or insert other name here that's not Fernando Mendoza, I would also then be interested in, all right, I'm going to bring Tua in on a 2-year, $30 million deal that's
Mhm.
front loaded. It was basically a 1-year deal. Because I don't know if I'm comfortable just starting a rookie that I didn't draft that high if I'm Arizona in that division. Dan, I think there are some backup spots. If I'm Tua, I would consider because I do think there are some quarterbacks that are vulnerable starters. Obviously, Minnesota and Atlanta, I mentioned those. I think he'd be the presumptive starter if he went there. But I do
Yeah.
think New York, if for some reason they're interested, the Giants, I would talk about it. I think I could maybe outperform um,
Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart. And I think that maybe he'd give me an injury opportunity to really start with then Harbaugh and Nagy in a system that I think I could perform well in. Nagy
Well,
loves
what if
double
it's the
team.
other New York, though? What if it's the
Now,
Jets?
listen, I would take it because he's going to be desperate for a job, right? Like
Right.
there's not a ton out there. Um, the other ones I would consider is like, okay, I would consider being a backup there. Listen, if the Chiefs are looking for, we don't know when Mahomes is going to be healthy. Hell yes, I would take that job and say, I'm going to start. I will willingly start for very little money. Tua's getting his money. So I'd be very willing to start for very little money in Kansas City for the first 6 games or whatever, right? And just say, let me showcase who I am, because
Yeah.
obviously we'll go right back to Pat. Um, that's those are the instant ones coming
And
to
then
mind.
a trade candidate for other injuries throughout the league, something like that.
Yes. Can you
Yeah,
think of
I
any
think
other
Minnesota's his
predicaments?
best.
Okay.
I think Minnesota's his best option, and I think that could work. I think Minnesota would be a good spot for him.
It'd be like going back to Kirk Cousins. It'd be like Kevin Stefanski saying, I
Yeah.
want to go back to Kirk Cousins.
But that was what worked so well is that Kevin O'Connell again is he's a smart guy. He draws it up. It is a system-based deal. Like, you've got to be able to run it and run it this way and follow the rhythm. And if you don't, then it's not going to work. Tua's that kind of quarterback, though. He's a timing and rhythm guy. Now, obviously, he's lost it in the recent years, and who knows if like the head injuries play a factor in that. If there was just getting out of sync with some of the other players that were being inserted in the mix, but he's a much better option than JJ McCarthy currently, right? I mean, that makes, I think, the Vikings a better team, and that gives him the best option to succeed because they have a decent all-around offense. He's got an epic receiver, and the team is 1 year removed from having 13 wins. Like, there's options there for this group. So, yeah, I think Tua makes the most sense with the Minnesota package entirely.
Yeah. And I think if I'm Tua, I'm praying to God that someone offers Daniel Jones a bigger contract and Indy is left like this, because Indy is far enough up in the draft. I mean, I don't know. I don't think unless they find someone they really love. But again, even then, it'll probably be a second rounder or a third round quarterback choice. And if I'm Tua, I at least then hopefully guarantee myself the first 4 games. And in that system, hopefully you play well enough to where you can just trust that you're set and you're good to go. And if I'm Indy, I would kick the tires on that, right? I would absolutely say, what are we supposed to do? If we sign Tua to a cheap deal and we draft a guy, then we're trying our best here to make it work. If we hate who we drafted and we hate Tua in a year from now, we'll just draft another guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And who knows what the regime would look like at that point in time. I'm with you. I do think if you're Minnesota, listen, as a Bears fan, I'd love to see that because I'm not scared of Tua in the sense that I think Tua would win more games than JJ McCarthy. But again, I think it resets the fact that the Minnesota Vikings in 2 or 3 years from now will once again be looking for a quarterback.
Right.
And that would make me feel good as a Bears fan in this extremely tough division to know that Minnesota feels like they're going to be battling for third, fourth, and a wild card spot for the next couple of years, because you're going to be battling for first, second, and a wild card spot for the next couple of years.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That
kind of
there's one or two other things really quickly I just want to throw out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the hot thing is who's the next Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, whatever. I'm surprised, and maybe San Francisco is just shutting down the talk. I'm surprised Mac Jones isn't getting talked about more, right? Like if I'm Mike LaFleur, I'd be really considering like, what do we got? What is it going to take for Mac Jones? Is it going to take a second round pick? I'd give up. He's better than any quarterback you're getting in the second round. And again, in a quarterback friendly system, what we finally saw him in a real quarterback friendly system, not what he had to deal with in Jacksonville and not what he had to deal with in New England under, defensive coordinators playing offensive coordinator. He played really well with Shanahan.
Yeah, he did.
And LaFleur's are of the Shanahan tree. I would really, and if I'm Atlanta, what did we say? Matt Ryan is looking for that type of quarterback. Now, maybe they think they have that guy in the second round or whatever. And maybe Ty Simpson, played just down the road in Alabama. But man, oh man, would I kick the tires on Mac Jones if I am a team with some weapons? Marvin Harrison Jr., they have some weapons. McBride, the tight end.
Michael Floyd, even too.
Floyd was up. Like I'm interested now. Maybe San Francisco will shut it down, but At some point, you would make the offer, and maybe because it's in division, you'd have to be. They just wouldn't do it. But at some point, if you're in Atlanta, or maybe if you're in Minnesota, you say, we're going to give you whatever it is you're asking for. I've heard San Francisco is not taking calls on it. That tells you their belief in Brock Purdy's ability to stay healthy. Yeah. But if they're taking calls, I think if you're again, and if you're in Indianapolis and it doesn't work out with Daniel Jones, he goes somewhere else. Those are teams I would absolutely be calling about Mac Jones. Now, if I am Mac Jones and I'm Mac Jones' agent, I would tell the Niners, for the love of God, please answer the call. Indianapolis, Minnesota, Atlanta, Arizona, please. You give come on, I've been good to you. Answer the call. If I'm his agent, I would say, on the flip side, please do not answer the call if it's the New York Jets. Please, for the love of God, owe us that as well. So let us stay here and back up. Because I think in another year from now, especially if he gets some more playing time next year because of another injury, it'll be like Malik Willis, where it's like they'll just be beating down the door. And I think maybe his contract is up in a year from now. So if you're San Francisco, you might want to try to get something for him, especially if it's a second round pick, maybe a third round pick. How could you turn that down for a backup quarterback? And the other name that I've heard the teams are calling about, which again, I feel good about, but I would say be careful, is that I've heard rumor that teams are calling about Tyson Bagent in Chicago, that they have this young, big, strong arm guy who in the preseason showed off in the preseason, that maybe don't bring him in to be a starter. But if you bring in, again, if you're in Indianapolis or you're left in the cold and you're holding no one, maybe you drafted a guy in the second round,
plan B,
and you bring in a Tyson Bagent and say, okay, we at least have a warm body with some upside. And if I'm the Bears, listen, if you can get yourself a third round, fourth round, fifth round pick, I would take that for Tyson Bagent. If it's 6 or later, I would just keep Tyson Bagent, because knock on real wood here, Caleb has been extremely durable, but you don't want to be left with Case Keenum if for some reason someone goes wrong. And the Bears have too many holes to draft a quarterback as opposed to just keep the guys you got in the building.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think there's possibilities there on the table. And yeah, if you can bring him in as a premier backup somewhere else. But if you're the Bears, you want him to be a backup for life, hopefully, and just have him be tied with Caleb Williams there for a while. So yeah, a lot of quarterback talk, a lot of franchise tag discussions, and this is just kind of
free Jameis
us up for the big
free Jameis. Let Jameis go somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. But yeah, next week's obviously the big week with the free agency news that's going to be dropping. We haven't really talked about it. I wonder if we'll do a Thursday show instead, once everything is cleared up, or if we just stick with Tuesday because so many of the reports will already be out by then. But
we might push back. We'll talk offline. I think that's maybe a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, next week sometime you will get our free agency reaction, and that'll be one of the bigger episodes of the year, I'm sure. So stay tuned for that. But until then, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.